Welcome back to From the Shed End. It's been a while. Say a while. It's been a couple of weeks. But we're back. I think we needed a break after last season. It was a tough season to take as a Chelsea fan. But Theo, how you doing? How's things?
Yeah, it's been a while indeed. First recording post-season since the end of season Newcastle game, which was back in May now, and a lot's happened since then. So I'm looking forward to touching on all those points and signings and outgoings. But I've been good, like you, just discussing how we've been struggling badly with hay fever. Tried my
Yeah,
best to detach myself from anything football related, but with Chelsea, it's always hard to detach yourself. We're always constantly being mentioned in the transfer news. And I also managed to get out to Paris to watch one of the Euro qualifiers. France against Greece wasn't the result I wanted. Mbappe had to retake his penalty after the keeper
I was going to
saved
say
it
some
for him.
controversy as well.
Bit a lot of controversy. It was our favourite ref as well, refereeing the
Oh,
game.
really?
La,
Oh, no way.
what's his name? Lauer's Antonio Lahuma's
Yeah.
Lauer's made some brave course, let's put it like that. But we know how he is. He likes to, if a player gets in his face, he'll just dish out the yellows straight away.
Mm.
But no, I enjoyed the game. Got to experience the Stade de France, which is a special stadium as well. And yeah, now I'm looking forward to chatting everything Chelsea related. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good like you. I've enjoyed the break from just. I mean, I've still obviously kept in touch with football and like I said to you beforehand, the Euros, under 21 Euros tournaments just kicked off this week. So there's still a lot of football. I've been watching the Champions League final, the other Europa League and Conference League final as well recently. So there's still a lot of football. I think the Women's World Cup's coming up, I think, as well soon. That's in Australia, I think, this year. So there's still a lot to do. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, good to get a break. Good to be back with the microphone in front of me. Looking forward to this one. I'm going to keep this one transfer related. The topic is called the Fire Sale Part Two. And strangely, I was listening to the Fire Sale, the original one we done a few episodes ago, and everything we spoke about is actually unfolding in front of us before our eyes. So let's start with the big one, I suppose. That for me anyway is Kai Havertz. Looks like he's almost on the line, signed on a dotted line to join Arsenal for 65 million, which for me is astronomical in comparison to. I don't think we paid what 80, maybe 75 for him. I don't. It wasn't any higher than that. I don't think. And to still have him go for the fee that he's gone for. Couple of questions for you, but going to a rival, Arsenal, are you surprised by that? Seems like we've got a really good relationship, albeit with Arsenal, but we've got a really good relationship in terms of transfers if you look back to previous history. But are you surprised him going to Arsenal? And also, do you think he'll fit into Arsenal's way of playing?
I'm not that surprised anymore with the kind of business we've been doing with Arsenal. You look at Jorginho back in January, David Luiz a couple of seasons ago, taking back to Petr Cech in 2015.
Mm.
It's happened. We have done business with them. It's frustrating because you look at kind of three of our biggest kind of outgoings this summer: Kovacic to City, Havertz to Arsenal, and the last one, Mason Mount, potentially to Manchester United. Three of our really important players signing for rivals, and it's kind of frustrating. I hate seeing us strengthen rivals. Whether that works or it doesn't work, you don't know. But I'm not that surprised because you look at Arsenal; they've kind of qualified for the Champions League. They're going to want to kind of increase their depth. They're losing a couple of bodies in midfield. They might want some healthy competition for Gabriel Jesus and Odegaard. And you look at Havertz at Chelsea. Has it really worked out? Has he kind of still is he still living off that one goal in the Champions League final? Since then he hasn't really kind of upped his game. You look at his performance last season since January. I think it was just 3 goals in 2023. Um, I do feel a bit bad for him last season. There was a lot of pressure put on him to score goals. Aubameyang being frozen out the team, Broja getting injured before Christmas. It felt like the pressure was on him and a lot of weight on his shoulders to supply those goals to us. And he isn't that type of player. He is the type of player that usually kind of bounces off a number 9 and kind of has that link up play. And the best of habits we saw was when we saw him with Lukaku. That being said, it's still a big blow for us. He's only 24. He's got bags of potential. Every time he plays for Germany, he seems to score goals as well. So maybe he just needs to be in the right system with the right manager. Um, and you just know, I think that Arteta will get the best out of him. You kind of do feel like he's got that kind of relationship with those younger players to kind of nurture them and see them become these talented players like he's done of Saka, Odegaard, Ben White. So it's a bit of a shame. I spoke to a few Arsenal fans about this move, and they're still a bit unsure about it as well. Um, which is normal, I guess, because Havertz's numbers at Chelsea aren't brilliant. I think he's only got about 20 league goals in nearly 100 appearances. So the numbers aren't great. But that being said, there's a lot of potential, and I do think Havertz's ceiling is still really high. So for us Chelsea fans, it's a bit of a blow, especially when it's going to a rival.
Yeah, it's tricky. I was speaking on a separate podcast yesterday, and I sort of echoed what you just said. I think Arteta will get the best out of Kai Havertz, and you have to think Kai Havertz has played under multiple, you know, different style of managers under Chelsea. I think he came when Frank Lampard was still here in his first stint. I think he's played under Thomas Tuchel, Graham Potter, Frank Lampard again. So he's had a number of managers and coaches to try and adapt to mold him. And if you remember back to that famous press conference or infamous press conference when Thomas Tuchel was asked what's his favorite position, and he couldn't really answer it. He couldn't tell us what his favorite position is. He almost danced around the question and said, well, he can play off the left and he can play as a false nine and he can play as a 10. And so he's never really had a definitive role, I don't think, at Chelsea. And I think that's really stumped his progression as a player. I think he's a really good player. I think aerial duels, in a box, aerially, he's really one of the best, I think, on his day. When he was at Bayern Leverkusen, one of the reasons why we brought him is because his energy and his bursts to get into the box was one of the things that I'd assume we picked up on as from a scouting perspective. And I think, I don't think Kai Havertz has ever, I don't know why we played him as a natural number nine. I think that was really harsh on him because, like you just said, the expectation for him was to go and score goals. And I don't think that's his end product. I don't think he should be the one that scores. I think he should be the one that provides the assists for the goal. I think he should be the one that comes and uses the space on the left or the right, or the pockets of space behind the attacker. And I think he'll do that at Arsenal. I think Arsenal Champions League now. It's a big. You need a big squad to do that. You need to have rotation. They missed Gabriel Jesus last season as well. When you think back to the injury, I think he's got a role to play with Xhaka. Xhaka filled a very good role for them, and I think he can do that role for Arsenal. Um, I think the fee for me is what has warmed me up to the idea of him leaving. Obviously, we knew by the 30th next Friday we had to get rid of X amount of players, X amount of money off the books, and X amount of money off the wage bill. So Kai Havertz been one of the higher paid players, and the fee that we've got for him, I can't argue with that. I think it's a really good bit of business. The problem is we've strengthened an Arsenal team that almost won the Premier League last season. So I think it'll work out for Arsenal. But I'm interested because I feel like the replacement we've brought in for Kai Havertz in Cuckoo, for me, I'm excited to see what he does. I mean, he's had a really good campaign in the Bundesliga. But what's your thoughts on Nkunku, who's officially now a Chelsea player? I think there was some press that came out this morning of him actually in a Chelsea shirt as well. So, what's your thoughts on Nkunku coming in, and what role do you expect him to play as well next season for us?
Yeah, but I'm excited. Like you, I'm really excited. I think the pictures finally got released today of him wearing the Chelsea shirt. It is still last season's Chelsea
I was
shirt,
just
but
about, I
it's
was
still
about to say that.
it's
Yeah,
still a Chelsea shirt. We still got the contract with three, so I guess it's only right to share the picture of him with that shirt. It'd be an odd one for me still because he passed his medical by under
mm,
Tuchel. I think signed when Graham Potter was in charge, and then now officially kind of unveiled under Pochettino. So you do wonder whose kind of player this is, whether it's a Pochettino signing, which clearly it isn't, whether it was a Tuchel one, a Potter one, a Bowley one. That being said, really excited, really exciting player, top goal scorer in the Bundesliga. I think joint top goal scorer with Nico Fuykberg, I think he's called from
mhm,
Wolfsburg. Um, he's very versatile. I was fortunate to see him come off the bench against Greece at the Stade de France last weekend. He made a little cameo alongside Olivier Giroud. And a lot of France fans are kind of telling me how lucky we are to have this player and how he's a top talent, not just in the Bundesliga but also in Ligue 1 football, because I think they signed him. Leipzig signed him from PSG in 2019, so he's kind of
yeah,
played now in three top leagues. So he's no kind of stranger to the big stage. Um, yeah, exciting player. I still don't really know what his kind of best position is. Similarly to Havertz, whether he's in more kind of a centre forward, a striker, whether he's that type of player that operates alongside a number nine. So that's still got to be seen. And I'm still also a bit skeptical now when we sign these kind of top talents from the Bundesliga. You look at Werner, you look at Havertz. It's
yeah,
still whether we can class those as successes. I'm not sure yet. So I really hope Nkuku maybe kind of doesn't doesn't really go with that kind of flow of those Bundesliga signings not performing. But really exciting player, and a lot of money as well. So there's obviously going to be a pressure for him to perform from the off. But hopefully he'll get we've got it wrapped up nice and early now, so he'll be reporting for preseason on the 3rd of July and working straight with the other players and Pochettino from the off.
Yeah, and another player who just before we came on to record was almost given the green light. The here we go by Fabrizio Romano, which kind of entails that it's a done deal. Nicholas Jackson is another player that we look to have signed, a striker, which is something that we've been crying out for. A fee in the region of 35 million euros with the release clause being activated. It might increase because we'll be paying that over in an installment period. So good player from what I mean, I'll be honest, as I said, I was on a podcast yesterday and I don't really know that much about him. So but I've been reassured by people that have been watching the league a lot closer than I have the last season that he's a good player. I think he scored 12 maybe in 19 or something along those lines, so he's got a good goal to match ratio, um, albeit in a Liga. But I think we've got to give him the time, and I think he's got to come in and gel, try and get used to. And I think it's coming at the right time. You know, new manager comes in. We've got a lot of new players that are going to be wanting to do well for the manager as well. So I think him coming in, I think is probably the right time. But what's your thoughts on Nicholas Jackson? Um, an out and out striker, I think. Another one to add to the books when you think about who's still got as strikers on the books at the moment. But what's your thoughts on him coming to the club?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to sit here and say that I watched every single one of his games in La Liga last season. I think his name slightly rings a bell. But good player. His numbers are good. The number of goals he's got and the number of appearances that he's made for Villarreal. I think there were a lot of big clubs that were linked to him
Yeah,
as well, back in January and also this summer. I just really hope it's not one of those players that we signed similarly to Datro Fofana, who's not really going to kind of have an instant impact and just make the odd kind of cameo appearance off the bench and then be linked to a loan move away. But I really hope he's one of those players that's got kind of the manager and the owners have got a plan for him from the off, and they've actually kind of scouted him so he knows that he's going to fit the system. But it makes sense to sign number nines. We kind of clearly lack goals. Broja is still injured. I think he still won't be fit come August, September. I know that he's going to be included in the preseason kind of training and the tour, but it's still too early to kind of throw him into the deep end when the season starts. Havertz obviously being linked with a move away. Aubameyang probably going to be off to Saudi as well. So yeah, it makes sense to sign a number nine and another player that I'm quite excited to watch, and hopefully he hits the ground running.
yeah. I mean, you've mentioned Aubameyang. I haven't mentioned Lukaku yet, but I will now. Um, Two players that you would assume and expect to lead the club in the next couple of weeks or so. It does free up a lot of room in that space, in that department, because obviously, like you just mentioned, Broja potentially won't be back. I think that he will be back at some point in the early part of the season, but to see him probably pre-season or August, September is probably a bit adventurous. So that David Dacho Fofana, I believe, from what I've read this morning, is now linked with Strasbourg due to the takeover, which we'll talk about slightly later on. So it does free up a lot of space, and obviously, Nkuku can play that role as well. Raheem Sterling technically can still play across the front three, depending on how Pochettino wants to line up. So I want to see him coming. I'm my expectation, and not to compare the two players at all, because I don't know much about Nicholas Jackson, but it reminds me of Didier Drogba when we didn't really know about him and we didn't really know what he was about, and he came into the league and he took it by storm eventually. He had that sort of first half of the season where he was throwing himself to the ground and he was trying to do this and that, and he nearly built up a reputation of being a diver and just but he found his ground. He found where he needed to be on the pitch, and it works for him. And I'm hoping we can see the same for Nicholas Jackson, because I think if we can, it's a steal in my opinion. 35 million for a striker in today's world is a bargain if we can get him playing well.
Yeah, and it's often these type of signings that go under the radar that are the ones that end up kind of doing the best, and there's kind of maybe less expectation, less pressure on the player. But yeah, I think he's from the Gambia as well, which I think geographically isn't too far from Ivory Coast.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no,
maybe
yeah.
those links to Drogba may be accurate after all.
He must be the first Gambian we've ever signed at
Yeah,
Chelsea. He's
yeah.
got to be. I don't think we've had a Gambian before, but yeah, I mean, I wanted to see him do well, I really do. And yeah, like we said, we've been crying out for a striker for how many years since Diego Costa. So let's hope Nicholas Jackson is that one to replace Aubameyang and Lukaku.
Yeah, let's hope. But Lukaku is another one that I think big wages as well. So if we can get him off the books as soon as possible, the better. I know there were talks end of last season, maybe reintegrating him into the first team, given that we need goals, we need a striker. But from what I've seen him say recently, I think he's even going to do
Yeah.
another interview about his life at Chelsea and London. Let him go, let him go, honestly. And he's now being linked to AC Milan. So if he goes to
Yeah.
AC Milan, clearly that whole love story of Inter Milan will be long gone.
Well, it won't go
Um,
down with the Inter fans well, will it?
no,
If he signs with their rivals, so and to be honest, I think he's shot himself in the foot because I think there was a gateway for him back into Chelsea this season. I think his resilience or his reluctance to come back and even entertain a conversation with Pochettino, train with the club through pre-season, which he's going to have to do if Inter can't sign him or AC don't want to pay the wages that he wants, or he doesn't want the deal that's been offered to him in Saudi as well. So there are options for him, but he doesn't obviously want them. So
no.
if that is the case, he comes back to Chelsea, then he's got no choice but to either stick it and just expect a lot of disgruntled fans to be hurling some form of abuse at him, which will happen unfortunately, or he takes the Saudi deal, or he takes a pay cut and goes to Inter or AC Milan. But
Yeah.
um, I want to talk about Mateo Kovacic next, who I love. And I've spoken about him so much on this podcast, how I love what he does for the club and for the team. Do you think now, based on last season, we spoke about how he sort of changed his mentality on the pitch as well, his attitude slightly changed as well, possibly down to injuries. But do you think this is probably the best time to sell Mateo Kovacic, especially at 29? I mean, he's at that age where he's only going to get one or two good seasons out of him. But do you think it's a good time to sell? Is it a bad thing that we sold to Manchester City?
Yeah, similarly to you, it's a player I loved. Even when he was back at Inter and Real Madrid, it was a player that I really appreciated and I loved watching. I've got somewhere in my cupboard a Real Madrid shirt with his name on and number on the back even. Um, but yeah, I think the timing is right. If I'm honest, you looked at his body language and his kind of attitude on the pitch last season, and he didn't look like he was quite there. He felt like he didn't really believe in the
Mm.
managers, the project as well, and he felt like his head was already kind of with Guardiola's City at the time. He's 29 as well, so it's kind of that age now where probably still the most money you can get from him is in his transfer window here. But that being said, I think it's 25 million with 5 million of bonuses is the price that's being kind of quoted by Manchester City or in the kind of rumors at the moment. And for me, that's not enough money. That's not enough money.
Oh,
A player
really?
like, for me, like a player of Kovacic's standard should be going for at least 40, 45, in my opinion. You're
Do
talking
you reckon
about
that's down to his contract though? He's only got 1 year left, I think, on his deal. I think.
Potentially, but I still feel like you're selling to a rival. You're selling to a player,
Mm.
a team that are desperate for midfielders after Gundogan's
Yeah, bump the
gonna
price up.
gonna go to Barcelona, and you're also looking at us, Chelsea. We're losing our whole midfield now. Kante signed with Saudi.
Mm.
Jorginho's
Yeah.
left in January. Kovacic is about to sign for City. Billy Gilmore, a player who used to be the fourth choice midfielder a couple of seasons ago, signed for Brighton last year. We've lost our whole 2021 spine in midfield in the space of two transfer windows. So
Mm.
we're desperate now for midfielders, and we should do everything possible not to keep these players, but to make it hard for other players to acquire them, and that means upping their prices, in my opinion.
Do you think if we didn't have the this sort of deadline hanging over our heads next Friday, the 30th, if that wasn't there, do you think there would be a bit more hardball being played by Todd Bowley and co, and maybe you know we're not going to sell him for 25. We're going to, like you just said, we are going to increase it. We want 40 million, or the player's going to leave on a free. Do you think that would be the case? And maybe the deadline is the reason why we're just having to sort of accept what is maybe not the best offer, but it's an offer that maybe we're willing to accept as a club.
Yeah, I definitely think that's playing a part as well, and I also think we want to come start of July to have just players that want to be at the club that will be part of the
Yeah.
preseason and that will be there for the start of the season as well. You look at our preseason last year. I still think we had Marcus Alonso playing against Club America, on our preseason tour of the US. So it doesn't really make sense to have players that just don't want to be there, using
Mm.
up training time, using up resources. So yeah, I think the sooner we can get these deals completed for the right amounts of money, the better, in my opinion. And we, like you did also say, we've got that deadline kind of um, putting added pressure on us to complete these deals come the end of June.
Yeah, I agree. I want to take it over to Saudi for a minute because there's been a lot of discussions, obviously, around we're cheating the game, and I don't know if you got to see Gary Neville and Jamie
Yeah,
Carragher's tweets, and I've said this 3 times in the last 24 hours. I'm going to say it again. This is the same Gary Neville that was not bothered when Ronaldo went over to Saudi and started to play football over there. The same Gary Neville that moaned about Qatar and sat in those stadiums during the World Cup and was not bothered about the amount of people that died in those stadiums to build them. He sat there and took a wage from Sky Sports to go over there and do that. Same Gary Neville that owns Salford Football Club and he's pushing them through the pyramid of the football league to sell them to someone potentially a rich Saudi owner. He's going to sell it. So I think he's a massive hypocrite. I really do. I think he's someone that
Keeps
if
praising
it's
Newcastle as well, doesn't he?
yeah, I mean he's praising Newcastle. The Premier League is built off exactly what the Saudi League are trying to do at the moment. Is basically putting all the money into the Premier League, getting all the best players to come to the Premier League, and earning more money. So that's exactly what the Saudi are trying to do. So I think they're both of them massive hypocrites. Both support clubs, United and Liverpool, who would love the Qataris to come and take their clubs over as well. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there because I want to talk about the players, the Chelsea players, and first of all, N'Golo Kante, who, as much as we knew he was potentially going to leave, the contract that was spoken about at the back end of the season seemed to have stalled. The conversations went dry, and there wasn't any real concrete evidence that he was going to sign that deal. So, Kante leaving is that a massive loss? You got your stress ball. If anyone can't see, Theo, I mentioned Kante, and now Theo's got a stress ball in his hand. So, do you think it's again the perfect time to sell Kante? Injuries permitted, and whatever's gone on with Kante, and for the money as well. He's won everything. He's been a loyal servant to the club. Is it the best time for him to go?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Kante last season, he only played, 5 or 6 games for us throughout the year. And even when Kante is fit or when he's closer to being fit, we still only get 50% of Kante throughout the season. So maybe the timing is right. And I think alongside Lukaku, he's our highest earner in terms of wages as well. So
Yeah.
it's a big wages off the books as well. Obviously, it's still such a shame, not just from a Chelsea perspective, but from a football perspective, to see a player of his quality, I think, play in a league that maybe fans in Europe will potentially watch or have any interest in. And he's still a player that, for me, can do an amazing job in Europe, in the Champions League, at a Euros, a World Cup. But I guess it's his fitness issues that are the problem. We're not even selling him; we're letting him go for free, which is a bit of a blow as well. Because you still think
Mm.
maybe Kante had 1 year left in his contract, we could have got him for a couple, 10 million, 15 million potentially. But yeah, I think we had a bit of hope when he kind of came back from that injury, and he, I think it was against Everton, and then he got a sequence of games going. There were talks about a contract extension, especially with the Kovacic rumours to City, the Jorginho departure to January. At the time, I really wanted him to stay, but now I'm kind of resigned to the fact that he's left. We've got to build a kind of a midfielder without him. There's talks about signing Caicedo now, who's another really exciting player with similar profile to Kante. Gutted to have missed out on Agate because I think that was a player that was
Mm.
brilliant to fill in the boots of Kante. But it seems like now that we've got rid of those three kind of core midfielders that we've had for the last maybe 5-6 years, the time's right now to move on and kind of build a new spine to our team.
You mentioned Caicedo, who was obviously heavily linked with Arsenal, and I think even Declan Rice. I think they're going to potentially miss out on both of those players because of the way they're trying to do these payments and offer X amount with add-ons. And I think especially West Ham, they just want 100 million cold cash. They don't want to be sort of. So with Caicedo, I mean, it looks like Arsenal are out of the race. They said that a couple of weeks ago. We are front runners or one of the front runners to sign him. I think he is the most crucial signing now, um, albeit as well a goalkeeper. But I think he's the most crucial signing we need. We've lost Kante. You mentioned, obviously losing Jorginho in the January window. Kovacic is gone as well, going to Manchester City. So I think we have to make sure that Enzo Fernandez has the right midfield partnership around him to be able to do what he needs to do. And we got to see glimpses of it last season. But one of the things that I spoke about on here, and I think you did as well, was that Enzo was looking more frustrated at the back end of the season. The lack of passes that were available to him in front of him, the support alongside him. We never got to see Kante and Enzo play together. I don't think at all, did we? No. So you know, it's a shame because I think that would have been a really good partnership between the two of them. But I think Moises Caicedo coming in, if we can sign him, would be just as not as good as Kante, but he'd be a good replacement for the level that we need to go forward in midfield. But if we don't get Caicedo, I mean, we're sort of running out of options now because we clearly probably won't sign Declan Rice, which was another big target for us. Who else is out there? I mean, I think you mentioned, I think it was Edison Alvarez, I think at one point as well. I think he's signed for someone already
I
now.
think he's about to
Is
go
it
to
Dortmund?
Dortmund. I think Arsenal being linked to Lavia now, who we might miss out on as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Does
yeah, yeah.
does this pave the way for maybe a Cesare Casade to maybe integrate himself into the team? Andre Santos
Possibly.
as well, but still very
Yeah,
young and still very raw. So I think they
mm,
could benefit from maybe a Premier League loan before being
yeah,
playing first team football for Chelsea.
yeah. I agree. I think I do agree. I'm hoping we get the Casado deal done. I mean, he wants to move. Ideally, I think it was Arsenal, but if he's happy, I think he's agreed personal terms with us
Mm.
as well already. So I think it's more a fee.
Yeah, he put that Instagram post out back in January announcing his departure as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And
I
then he
don't
ended
like
up.
that though.
No, I didn't like that at all. It's a bit
Yeah, yeah,
disrespectful to the club.
yeah. Just let's do it through the correct channels and
Yeah,
announce it properly. But yeah, Caicedo, if we can get him, what a good deal that would be, and good midfield partnership as well. But sticking with Saudi because there's still a lot of players we've got to get through. Um, Koulibaly, another player who has never really worked in his only season for us so far, and he came with the massive expectation of being, I suppose, the next Thiago Silva. Passing the baton over from Thiago Silva, not in terms of the quality, but in terms of that experience of being a top defender in a top league in Serie A. You'd expect him to be able to do that, and he just didn't really. He didn't really grasp the Premier League, I don't think. So I think I can't remember if it's 15 or 20 we're expected to receive for a fee for him, which I think is crazy because we spent quite a bit on him, and we were only 12 months down the line. Is this the right thing to do for Todd Bowley rather than hold on to these players like we've done in the past and loan them out and then they end up as a Bakayoko who's just left the club? Is it right that we just cut our losses and say, right, we spent 60 million on a player, but we'll sell them for 20 and take the 40 mil loss? Is that probably the best way to go, especially with the deadline as well?
yeah, potentially, and I think he's also one that's earning a lot of wages, so it's wages
Mm,
off the book. But that being said, for me, that's a player that I would have given another season to. Like you
mm,
said, it's only 12 months. We're going to give Cucurella more time, I think. Why not give Koulibaly more time?
mm,
Um, and after Silva, probably our most experienced centre back, and we do this talk of Chaloba going to Inter Milan.
yeah.
So I feel like Koulibaly is one you might want to keep hold of, and another player that's still got that kind of potential and quality to play in Europe at least, or at the top level. So yeah, I'm a bit disappointed about this one. All the other moves to Saudi make sense in my opinion. The Ziyech's, the the Edouard Mendy's, the Kante even, but for me, Koulibaly is one that would have kept for at least another 12 months, or maybe reassess things come January. But like you said, do you want to let it get into Bakayoko territory when you've got this player on quite a long contract that's just sitting there earning a lot of money? Probably
Mm.
not. So maybe the time is right. If you could recoup at least half the money we paid for him last summer, then why not? But personally, I would have given him another year.
I mean, I would agree, and I do agree. But I think when you look back to last season when Badiashile, who played really well for a part of the season, found himself on the back end of the season on the bench a lot. So I think maybe we are overcapacitated in that area. I think Levi Colwell, if Trevor Chalobah doesn't leave, there's two centre backs there. Thiago Silva, Wesley Fofana, so there's four already. I feel like I'm missing someone, but yeah, I mean, I think we've got enough centre backs even without Koulibaly. I think if we can keep Levi Colwell and Trevor Chalobah does stay, we do lose a bit of experience because I still think Koulibaly is a very experienced centre back. He's a very solid centre back on his day, and he did show us glimpses of that last season. But I just don't think it was consistent enough, and maybe that was again down to the managerial changes as well. It could be a massive factor. The fact that there's not enough space to train all the players for match days. To prep for match days. So it could be a number of things. I think I agree with the cashing in mentality. I think I don't want to see players going out on loan, running down contracts, and I like the fact that we terminated Ross Barkley's contract and we just got rid of him. And I think Danny Drinkwater was similar, or his contract has expired. Bakayoko's now off the books. These players have to go. Ethan Ampadu, another player that I think has been told he doesn't really have a future at Chelsea, and I think from what I've just read, if not just before or maybe earlier, I think there's a 12 million valuation slapped on him. So clubs will be interested in that. I mean, that's relatively cheap for a good centre back for his for the age that he is. So is it? I mean, Chalobah's another. You mentioned him. He's another one for me. I want him to stay, but I think for his own personal progression, I think going to Inter Milan, which is one of the clubs that is heavily interested in him, would be a really good signing for them. So, what do you think about Chalobah, who has broken into the senior team, has cemented himself slightly, but just hasn't really maybe given a chance the opportunity to sustain that throughout a season?
Yeah, I mean his trajectory at Chelsea really reminds me of kind of Fikayo Tomori's, who
Yeah,
started off really well. Then I think maybe might have got an injury and struggled to kind of break back into the team. It feels like exactly what Trevor Chalobah's kind of had in the last season or two. He's kind of had a really impactful start, then struggled to get into the team. We had all these centre players signed in last summer, the likes of Koulibaly, Wesley Fofana. He kind of didn't really have he was a guaranteed starter for every game, and he might look at Serie A and see it as a really kind of appealing or attractive option for him. Tomori's gone there and really shone, and now he's kind of in contention to be at the called up for the England squad with every time there's an international break. So I think for his own kind of personal development, it would be a fantastic move for him. But I still, like I mentioned about Koulibaly, I think if we sell both him and Trevor Chalobah will be short in
mm,
defenders, in my opinion. That leaves us with Silva, Wesley Fofana, and Colwell. I think it could be depends as well if Pochettino plans on playing a back three or a back four.
Badia
But
Shill as well.
Badiashile, I always forget about Badiashile, yeah. But
Yeah,
still
yeah.
one that's still a bit of question marks about whether he's got that level or that
Mm.
also the I'm still a big fan of Badiashile's, but yeah, it might be times right maybe for Chiloba maybe to have another loan or even a permanent move away from the club. But again, one that might come back to bite us.
True, I agree. I agree. I want to talk about Mason, Money Mace, Mason Mount, who it's such a strange one because I feel this deal should be wrapped up by now. I feel, um, and I know you posted it on our socials when he sort of done his sort of final lap of honour at Stamford Bridge and then came back out after the fans had left. He kind of came back out for one last sort of walk around. The stress ball's out again. Anyone listening on the audio, I've mentioned Kante, the stress ball. Now I'm doing Mason Mount is back again. Um, yeah, no, Mason Mount obviously going to Manchester United looks like it's 50%. You know, I think he wants to move. The club want the move. Chelsea potentially would not be, standing away of the move. I just think the valuation of what Chelsea want is far away from what United want. It's split the fan base as always. You know, some of the fans are saying that he's not proper Chelsea, whatever that means. I don't understand what proper Chelsea is, but um, what's your thoughts? I mean, he's someone that we've spoken about a lot on here already. But what's your thoughts on him going to Manchester United, which for me is it's a bit of a no-no. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, dagger in the heart, really. Massive
Mm,
dagger in the heart. It's kind of shades of that Juan Mata move to
yeah,
United back in 2014. Obviously, different circumstances. Mata frozen out the team. I know Mourinho wanted kind of a fresh start elsewhere. Mount still kind of a bit unknown for the reason why he wants to move away. And
mm,
last season, obviously, he struggled with fitness. He wasn't kind of performing to the level, but he's got a fresh manager now. The fans adore him. Chelsea's his boyhood club. We made him tons of different contract proposals, according to the rumors. Um, it feels like maybe he does just want to move away and he's not really committed to
mm,
Chelsea. Obviously, we don't know what happens behind the scenes or what has happened behind the scenes, but one that for me is needs to kind of conclude soon because the last thing you want is a player in preseason with 1 year left on his contract who might run down his contract and then we risk losing him for a free next year. I mean, ideal situation would be he stays for that 1 year, kind of cements himself back into the team as a starter, a world class player, um, and Pochettino gets him to extend. But that's a dream situation, and realistically, I don't think that's going to happen, especially with what Bowley said last summer of not wanting players to stay that are going to leave for free next summer.
mm,
For me, the valuation makes sense. You've got an English talent going to a rival club, even if it's just 1 year left on his contract. I think 60 million makes sense. It should even be maybe close to 70, 75. You look at
yeah,
when Hazard went to Real Madrid. I think he had 1 year left on his deal. That was 100 million, I think. So you add in that kind of English tax to it, or whatever you call it,
yeah, yeah,
to a rival team. 70 million makes sense. And then what I'm not really appreciating as well is I'm hearing Manchester United are offering him 200,000 a week. I think that's what we also offered him, or closer to that. So it seems like maybe he just wants to go to Manchester United. He wants to play in the Champions League again. He doesn't believe in the Chelsea project or vision. And if
Mm,
that's the case, then let him go. The last thing you want is a player that's not kind of there or with it and not committed to the club, not wanting to represent the badge. And like I said, it's a dagger to the heart because you look at those
mm,
pictures of Mount, James, Abraham, when they won the Champions League in 2021, it just felt like this is what we've been waiting for as Chelsea fans. Cobham
mm.
boys with the medals around their necks. Um, but yeah, I think sometimes it's just best to move on and let these things happen. And I want to say wish him the best, but can you really wish him the best at United? Probably not.
I mean, something's clearly happened behind the scenes. For someone who's so connected to the club from youth level all the way to the first team, he's been at the club for his whole life. It's the duration of his footballing career. To then suddenly just not want to even engage, in a discussion anymore about a potential contract with the club that he claims to love. Something has happened at the club for that breakdown in communication, in my opinion. I, I mean, no one is bigger than the club, and players will come and go. It is. I think it's a shame because I think he could have gone on to be, the legend, a legend of the club, and I think he would be one of those players that could say, "Look, I've played for Chelsea throughout my life." The Mark Noble of Chelsea. One of those players that just is Chelsea through and through. I think he had that, and I think he still has that opportunity. I think, like you said, 200 grand is what we. I think we offered him more than 200
Mm.
grand. I think what I initially read a couple of months ago was that he didn't want an 8-year deal, which is what Todd Bowley and the Chelsea board were trying to offer to him. We then reduced that down to 5 years. So the same deal that United are offering Mason Mount, we've offered to him, and that's the last offer. So if you're not willing to sign the deal that another club is giving you, that tells me that you have no intention. Something has happened at the club. So it is a shame. I think his agent came out yesterday and said that he's basically there's no chance of him signing a
Yeah.
deal at Chelsea, and there's 85% chance of him signing for Manchester United. So according to Chelsea, the deal's got to be done by next Friday. Otherwise, it's not happening.
I,
So
I think his fitness instructor posted an Instagram post with can't wait to see him doing well at Manchester United next season.
I,
And
I did see that, but is it
yeah,
real? Because then I seen two versions of it. Yeah, I
maybe,
did.
maybe. But even
No,
those,
you might be right.
yeah, even those
Yeah,
F1 interviews he did alongside Chilwell in Barcelona when he was at the Formula One,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they just didn't really reassure any Chelsea fans, did they? When he said he's not
No, no,
sure, and even thinking back to that banner we the Matthew Harding put
yeah,
for him with the boy who had a dream with him of the Champions League trophy. It's all kind of a bit of a shame. It felt like this one was
mm.
a player, like you said, the next Mark Noble or next John Terry, the player who'd play into his late 30s at Chelsea. So yeah, a real shame. But players come and go, like you said at the start. So sometimes we just got to accept these things.
I agree. I agree. We're almost done through the long list of transfers. We're nearly there.
Take a breath and a sip of water.
Yeah, literally. I mean, it shows that we're doing the right thing. I think anyone who's shocked that we're selling all these players, like I said, I think it's episode 87, maybe the fire sale part one. If you go and listen to that, we spoke about it then, and I think this was always going to happen. We needed to do this. We haven't spoke about Callum Hudson-Odoi, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Edouard Mendy. We've slightly touched on Hakim Ziyech. There's still loads of players that need to leave the club. But one of them, David Datcher Fofana, who I mentioned earlier, with the takeover of Strasbourg as well, which went through yesterday, which the Kai Havertz money has actually gone on to pay for the club. It's the same amount, which is crazy to me. But 65 million, I think we've spent on the club. Is it a sensible move, first of all, for us to be able to have multiple clubs that we're affiliated with, or that we own, or that we have that we can feed some of our players through, like David Datcher Fofana, who might go on loan there?
Yeah, it might make sense. I think when you're looking to sign Agate or trying to invest some money or pump some money into Sporting Lisbon, so it might have created that partnership between the two clubs. I think it's Manchester City who have that connection. I think between I think it's an Australian club and I think it might be Girona and a French
Yeah,
club as well. So maybe it's the new way going forward is these owners kind of buying new clubs and maybe creating those partnerships and those kind of player swaps. And Strasbourg Ligue 1 is a brilliant league to kind of develop talent as well. So if Thatcher
yeah,
Fofana being Ivorian, he'll be French speaking. If you can go out to Ligue 1, get maybe 15 goals in that league. You look at what RC Lens achieved this season, finishing second, qualifying from the Champions League.
yeah.
Smaller teams can do big things in that league. So it could be quite exciting for Fofana to play his football there. Obviously, I think he was at Molde before, Norwegian team, going from
Yeah,
the Norwegian division to the Ligue 1 is still a massive step up, massive step up. So I'm all for that loan move. I think there's other talks between Galatasaray, Union Berlin as well, big teams as well, really big teams. But I do think it's a loan is needed for him for sure.
yeah, definitely. And if, like we said, if we do, which it looks like we will get Nicholas Jackson, um, there's talk about obviously Broy is going to be coming back at some point, and then I still think we might sign another attacking player. I do think we will. I don't know whether that's an out-and-out striker or if it's a number 10 or someone that's going to play off the striker. But I think we'll sign one more. We've lost, if we do lose Mason Mount, we've lost João Felix, who didn't renew his loan. So we've lost two key players in that department there. And we do need a bit more depth, I think. So I think we'll get someone else in. Wanted to touch on goalkeepers very quickly because obviously Edouard Mendy, who we did mention, is due to have his medical, if not today, I think in the next coming days before he signs his new deal. Onana is a goalkeeper that we've been linked with so much over the last couple of weeks as well. Also linked to Manchester United, but that surely is the next key area alongside if we can sign Moises Caicedo, but the key area that we have to focus on because we can't rely on Kepa. Slanina, we're not sure if he's able to step up just yet, but we need to get a goalkeeper in that can compete with Kepa, maybe take that number one spot from him.
Yeah, I'm still a bit mixed on this one because I think Pochettino has come out recently and said that Kepa's my number one for next season. I think he might have said that, which kind of leaves the intention that he might want a backup goalkeeper. But backup, you don't know nowadays if it's a keeper that can overtake him or can just play second fiddle. If it is a keeper that's going to play second fiddle,
Slanina,
I say let it be Slanina.
yeah.
Give him the cup games, give him maybe the game straight after the breaks, the international breaks, give him the odd kind of midweek fixture. But fantastic goalkeeper. He's doing wonders with the US national team and the youth level, and with the development squad last season. And it could be the perfect kind of opportunity for him to kind of play alongside a more experienced keeper, like we saw with Courtois and Petr Cech, before
Yeah.
slowly kind of overtaking him and becoming the number one. But going into a new season where we've still got high expectations, we've got a new manager. Do we want to have Kepa as our number one? I'm not saying Kepa's not a talented keeper because he's shown last season that he's been brilliant and probably our second best player after Thiago Silva and Enzo, or third best player. But I'm still very mixed with this one because I think, like you said, Onana looks like he might go to United. David
Yeah.
Raya is looking like he might go to Tottenham. So you do wonder if we do sign a keeper, who's it going to be? I think Porto's keeper, Diogo Costa, is going to cost us an arm and a leg. I think 70, 80 million is what they're wanting for him, which is a lot of money for a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I think, like you mentioned at the beginning, our priority should be midfield. Caicedo, that's where all our money, or a large chunk of our money this summer window should go towards. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with Kepa and Stanina as number one and number two for next season.
I would not be. I wouldn't be annoyed. I think that'd be a really good, backup goalkeeper. He's not. He's not a rubbish goalkeeper. I've watched him for the dev squad. Like you said, he's doing wonders for the national team as well. So wouldn't be annoyed at that at all. I just think it means Kepa would need to really step up and maybe try and mitigate some of those errors that he's done last season as well. But there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to look forward to discussing these. I think more incomings, hopefully, rather than outgoings, but we'll see. Anyone who's listening, please make sure you go and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you go and hit the Linktree link in the description. That will take you to all our social accounts and all our podcast episodes that we've previously recorded. Theo, as always, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. It's good to be back, especially on a Friday as well. Friday therapy sessions are back in order. We'll be back next week, hopefully, with another episode. Until then, stay safe and thank you very much for listening.